I was communications chief for a company of the engineers, and I had gone to radio school in Texas, and I went to the Signal Corps School in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, to help strengthen and broaden my ability to communicate by radio and signal flags and everything else. But I loved the firing range. Fired expert with everything the military had. I showed a lot of the folks how to handle a machine gun, the Thompson submachine gun. I told them to hold it to where the bullet sprayed horizontal and not vertical. You could kill a whole lot more people that way. Couldn't get into Cherbourg, so we went back over to Southampton for about a month, I guess. Finally, we did land at, can't remember the name of the port. It was north of Cherbourg, and we drove for a couple of days up to a little town of Stoppels, Belgium. Stayed there 2 or 3 days, and then we moved out down to the Siegfried line in Elsenborn. We covered the top 23 miles. And when we would get a little bit anxious and maybe fire rifles into German facilities on the German side of the Siegfried line, they would in turn come right back at us with whatever we'd fired in the first place. But once in a while, to teach us a lesson, they would fire something a whole lot heavier, and that would remind us to keep our rifles quiet. So we stayed there, and I became familiar with that whole area by always riding with my captain. So when the day the war started on the 15th of December, I was with my captain. We'd been down south of us where the 106th Infantry was supposed to be located. And we rode and rode and rode out of our territory and into theirs. Couldn't find any American soldiers. Finally, we spotted a tank sitting under a small tree, and from a distance we could tell it was a tank before we could see the air, how the exhaust would heat up the overhead. And we stopped and talked to them, and they said they didn't know 106 had just disappeared. So we turned back around and was heading up Malmedy Road up toward, where were we going? We were going up toward Crinkelt and Rockaras, and we went on to Division. As we were just north of St. Vis, we passed one of the large highway signs, and I noticed that the highway sign pointing to Malmedy was pointing in the wrong direction. And I asked the captain if he noticed that, and he said, hell yes. So we went on to division headquarters, which was either in Elsenborn or Spa, Belgium. And they didn't believe us. I thought that's one hell of a way to start a war. Nobody believing anyone. But we found out later, almost immediately, that there really was a war going on, and in the first 48 hours, somehow we managed to lose 3,000 men and higher-ups call on us dumb engineers and says, get up on the line there and act like you know something about fighting. So we didn't have, but I don't know, it's less than a platoon of men. I went out and we dug in on the Elsenborn Ridge. We were supposed to hold it, and A Company and B Company together didn't have more than 90 men. And we knew the Germans had somewhere between 12 and 1,400. And they jumped all over us the next day. I don't know, I talked to my Lord a little bit about him taking charge of the battle the next day, because I knew that we didn't have a chance. For when I was digging my foxhole there, my captain, the command post was about, I don't know, 3 or 4 yards off to my right. He says, come get in the hole with me, Sergeant. And the first words out of his mouth, we're not going to retreat. We're not going to surrender. We'll fight to the last man. Then he said, fix your bayonet and go pass the word. And as I'm crawling out the foxhole, he said, I'll shoot the first person I see trying to retreat. And I figured I better get busy talking to the Lord, because I didn't think I'd get off the Elsenborn Ridge alive. It almost worked out that way, but you can't be talking to the head man. And the next morning, it went from bad to worse. Well, it started out, even the air temperature was against us. It was 13 below zero. Most of us were not really geared up for below zero weather, but somehow my forward observer was off to my right by 15 feet and maybe 3 or 4 feet forward. And I got a feeling that my Lord was giving him the coordinates, and he was passing them on back to the artillery as his. It didn't matter to me whose it was. They'd fire a volley of 4 shells, and they'd all hit within a 50-foot circle. And just about every time it'd take out one of their artillery cannons, they were built on a tank chassis. But anyway, I'd volunteered to check out our gun positions after each attack, for I knew that Captain Harvesticker was going to want to know about it. So on my first try out of the foxhole, I got maybe 10 feet out before I had shrapnel come through my right arm. But I could tell that my arm wasn't broken, so I booted on up to my left flank gun. And lo and behold, there's my great big huge buddy from Mississippi sitting there. They'd pulled the gun down into the trench like they do. And he was crying. And in my normal conversation, I said, what the hell's wrong with you? And he just, you sit there facing the rear with your rifle between your legs, and he said the shrapnel had hit the tip end of the barrel on his Garand, and he said it almost jerked that 10-pound rifle out from between his legs, and all of this probably happened in 5 or 6 seconds. I said, "Here, take mine." That made it a little easier for me to boogie on down and check out my other 2 guns. But I finally got my own rifle back after the battle, and we'd all gone back to Elsenborn Ridge. And my captain, he said, "Sergeant, you wound up tighter than a banjo string. Get your ass over to Liège for a couple of days and unwind." And the first day that I was over there, I didn't see an American. Second day I saw 2. Third day I saw 1. Guess they were all still doing their job with the Germans. But the Germans killed 2 of us and wounded 45, which was half of the men we had. But I estimated from my position and knowing a little bit about war, I determined that we had killed 1,000 Germans. We must kill close to 500 on the first attack. And after the darkness, I'm up front again checking out our positions, and I must have heard several hundred German voices, and I know to this day that they were out there picking up dead bodies so we wouldn't know how many Germans we killed. The Time Life company, the magazine people who wrote a book about the Battle of Elsenborn Ridge, they didn't know where Elsenborn Ridge was because they were all in Bastogne. They said we killed 400, but I said we killed 1,000. And I think I was right, because that same 6th Panzer Army, Hitler's favorite, Hitler's best, Hitler's biggest, he'd pull them off the Russian front. Up in the industrial area of Germany in the first week of March, they surrendered to us. And one of them asked my commander, company commander, who was that elite force on Elsenborn Ridge that they could not get through. And of course the captain told him it was us. And he said that he had been in Germany's armies from the beginning, and he had never been up against anyone that they couldn't get through. But they met their master that day. I'm glad I got through it, for the night before everything started, I didn't think I'd be alive the next day. I've spoken to 1,000 people, I guess, school children, junior high and high school students, and they're all amazed, but 99% of them didn't know a thing about Battle of the Bulge. They'd heard the name and that was it. And the only one I ever had to put a question on me, she knew about it because her father was in the Army at Fort Bragg. Our Undersecretary of the Army was in Belgium. I believe that was 7 years ago. And let's see, the Undersecretary was there, and our 3-star general of World War II, General Bradley's grandson, was there, and he was in charge of all American ground forces in Europe. And one of them went to the microphone after we'd eaten a great supper and said, we have I think he said, we have a World War II hero. And then he called my name. And so I went down to the microphone and accepted the medals from the base commander, who was just I believe he was a major, but he told me right quick that he was also a combat engineer. And I spoke to the crowd of maybe 200 at the time. My experience in a short memory, and then that delayed us getting back to the hotel for another hour because everybody in there had a camera and they all wanted to get the picture made. Great night. You're either crazy or the bravest person I've ever met. And he said, I've recommended you for the Medal of the Silver Star.
Because of your actions on
Yeah.
Elsenborn Ridge.
Yeah, he said, because of my actions above and beyond the call of duty. Under extremely heavy enemy fire from large German forces. Shoot. Engineers, finest people on earth. We were in just a great division. We didn't look like much, but everybody knew how to fight. Yep. Yeah, I'm proud of that insignia.